Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know it's Saturday. Is everybody still sleeping in? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There we go. Alhamdulillah. So, alhamdulillah, last week we spoke about, we had a marathon session talking about the idea of purification and purity. Okay? And this week, as you know, we are going to speak about Salaah. Now, although this is a workshop on prayer, I hope you all know that within 2 hours, it's almost impossible to cover every single aspect of prayer. I mean, there's Salat al-Janazah. There is prayer in the Kaaba. How do you pray in the Kaaba? There's so many different questions that come up in this chapter. But what we'll do is we'll try to, there's a couple of things I'm going to say first. Can you hear me okay? Even with the mic like this? Or do I have to put it like this? No difference? Okay. So there's a couple things. The first thing is we are going to cover the most basic building blocks of the prayer and then build from there gradually more and more. And we will at some point, once we've understood what an individual has to do in prayer, we'll go into question and answer. And I'll see from you all what aspects of prayer are we leaving out, and I'll fill in that way, because there's no way I can cover everything, but we'll talk about the building blocks. What is fard in salah? What are the conditions of salah? What is sunnah? What breaks your prayer? What is makruh during prayer? These types of things. I'm using two works, generally speaking. One I'm using is a translation of the book called Quduri, the Kitab of Quduri, and the Maraqi Sa'adat, the Ascent of Felicity. That's been translated very well by Sheikh Faraz Khan. So the second thing I'm going to say is, if you remember, I mentioned last week that fiqh, or Islamic law, is an attempt to try to understand what the Sharia is. And that's why there are different opinions. So just like how there are many different opinions, we know classically there are 4 schools of thought, but even within those 4 schools of thought, sometimes the scholars had different opinions. So you will sometimes see different opinions. Yeah, you think so? I didn't want to put it on my head. It's really tiring to put it on my head. How am I going to do this? Okay, is that better? Yeah? Let's see if this works. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you're going to see now, what we said before was, from which perspective will we teach a workshop on prayer? If you're teaching a new Muslim or a child how to pray, you don't need to go into this scholar said this scholar said, because it's all basic. It's all the same. When you start getting into the details, it differs a lot. It differs a lot. Because the details, where do you put your hands? Here, here, here. How do you put your hands? Where do you look? Where do you put your eyes? How much Quran do you have to recite? So these things are differences of opinion. When you look at what the ideal prayer looks like the perfect prayer, the funny thing is, there's not much disagreement about that. But what they disagreed about was, what is the bare minimum? What is sunnah? Right? So is it sunnah to recite a second surah after Fatiha? Or is it wajib to do that? They had differences of opinion. Right? Is it sunnah to lift your hands up, to do raf al-yadayn every single time you move in prayer? Or is it not sunnah to do that? Is it permissible to do that? There's different opinions. So I'm going to take the perspective of what is majority of people, but it doesn't mean that I'm only going to speak about that. And that is from the Hanafi school. We're going to build that idea, but we will speak about other opinions as well. And the second thing is, you'll notice in the text that I'm putting up, I did not write this. It's a translation of a very, very classical ancient text. And so sometimes you will see that they will cite the other scholars, Imam Abu Yusuf, Imam Muhammad. And the reason why I left that in there is for you to see sometimes, even within one school, there's differences of opinion. Okay? So the first thing. And just like last time, just to make sure we keep this flowing, anytime you have a question about what we're speaking about in the same chapter, just ask me. You don't have to wait to the end. Okay? Bismillah. Let's begin. So the first thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right, that inna salata kanat al mu'minina kitaban mawquta. That indeed the prayer has been it's been prescribed for the believers in a specific timing. Okay, that it is something that has to be done at a very specific time. So you can't just say pray 5 times a day. Oh yeah, whichever 5 times you want, as we know. So we just prayed Dhuhr. So what is the beginning? Let's say Fajr. We're talking about the times of Fajr. The beginning of the Fajr prayer comes at the beginning of what you call true dawn. Okay? True dawn is different than false dawn. False dawn, if you're in the night and you're looking at the horizon, before the dawn, the sun starts to come up, there'll be sometimes one light that comes. It's just like a vertical column of light comes in the sky. Has anyone seen this before? Anyone seen it before? Yeah. So it's just, and you'll think that that's the true dawn. That's not the true dawn. It's something that comes right before. The true dawn comes when the light is horizontal. So along the horizon, you start seeing lightness start coming all across evenly. That is when you know that the world is turning and the sun is getting closer to the sun, right? So the rays start coming up. And when you first see that light on the horizon, that is what you call Fajr. At that time is when you can start praying Fajr. At that time is when you must stop eating. So the fast starts at that time. A lot of people get mixed up and they think that Fajr starts at the adhan. But what happens if the local masjid, I mean, here we don't have out loud adhans, but in some countries, the adhan does not follow the time of the prayer exactly. So for example, some places they wait 10 minutes before they call adhan. They wait a little bit. Do you have to follow the adhan of the neighborhood or do you follow the timing? Which one? The exact time. Now the funny thing is, prayer is not even by timing in terms of the watch. It's by what you observe. But the prayer times that we have on the calendar are by calculations as to when would that light come. You get it? So now any prayer calendar that you have, there are different ways to calculate when does Fajr come in. Okay, there are different degrees and angles. I'm not going to get into the science of it. So whichever calendar you follow is fine. Yes? No. Would it be recommended at Fajr time that you eat outside so you can watch the horizon? It's a very good question, but my dear young brother, I will say be very careful that you don't get into obsessive wasawis behavior, because that, if you had to stand outside and eat, you'd be too scared to eat inside. You see what I'm saying? And no, you don't have to do that. Once you have a time, Fajr time on this calendar, I can follow that, and as long as the clock does not turn that time, I can eat until then. There's another misconception. By the way, this is not the laws of fasting. We'll talk about fasting another time. But yeah, you don't have to do that. All right? Yeah, if you want to do that for fun, you can do that like for fun. But otherwise, your mom's going to say, Beta, why are you always standing outside, at Sehri time? And you see what I'm saying? So, alhamdulillah. Okay. The end of Fajr is when the sun, you see it come up and it is risen. So basically, you cannot pray when the sun starts to rise. Once you see the sun come over the horizon, that's called sunrise, and you have to stop at that point in time. Okay? There's no praying at that time. Different opinions. Can you pray during sunrise, meaning at the end of Fajr? There's different opinions. In the Hanafi school, let's say, for example, you wake up late, and there's 1 minute left for Fajr. So you make your wudu quickly and you're started to pray Fajr. And then the time for sunrise goes. Is your prayer, can you keep praying or do you have to stop? Keep praying? Who says you have to stop? One person. Who says you can keep going through sunrise? Okay. There are different opinions in the madhahib. Okay? The Hanafi, the Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali school, they said, even if the sun is rising, as long as you started before, you can pray into the sunrise even though the time has technically passed, but you started when it was fine. So you can pray and complete your prayer. And there's a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, if anybody who catches one rak'ah of Fajr, he caught the prayer. But the Hanafi school said, no. Once the sunrise moment goes off, you have to stop praying because your prayer has been broken. Okay, so there's a difference. It's a pretty significant difference. In other words, they don't allow you to, if there's 1 minute left for Fajr, you have to finish before 1 minute is up. Otherwise, your prayer is cut off and you have to repeat it again after the Ishraq time. Yes? Then you've missed your prayer. Yeah, you missed your prayer. What do you mean fulfilling the conditions? Yeah. Yes. You lost the prayer. Yeah. That's for all the time. Now there is one minority opinion that says you can quickly make tayammum just to catch the prayer time. Yeah, but that's a minority opinion, no. But if you cannot, normal conditions, no. Okay, then the next prayer time is Dhuhr. Dhuhr time, yes. Fajr question. "20 minutes before." No. You can. Yeah, you can pray. You can pray as long as you say Assalamu alaikum before the sunrise. You're fine.
If you could quickly repeat the question,
Oh, I'll repeat the question next time. Sorry if okay. The question was, do you have to stop praying like sometime before sunrise so you don't go into sunrise? The answer is no. You can actually pray your Fajr, right up until the end of the time, as long as you wrap up before sunrise comes in, if you're on that opinion, right? Yeah, it's open, yeah. Of course, the best prayer, we're going to talk about the ideal times to pray. Praying at the first of the time, praying at the, we're going to talk about the ideal times for prayer a little bit later. Any other questions about Fajr timing? Okay, Dhuhr timing. When does Dhuhr start? At 12 o'clock? Yeah? Yes. So it's when the sun, right? I mean, this is how the sun looks. It comes up, and it goes like this, and it comes back down again, right? That's how it looks like on the horizon. So when the sun is right at the zenith, it's at the highest point of the sky, it's when it's shining straight down on you, your shadow, it's shining on your head, so your shadow will be the smallest shadow in the day. That is a time when Dhuhr, just a few moments after that, that's when it comes in, okay? So that time, for example, these days, I don't know the exact Zawal time these days. Yeah, 1:18 or something, let's say. Okay? So you basically, as soon as 1:18 comes, few moments later, you can start praying. You don't have to wait till even minutes after. And then, what time does Dhuhr end? Yeah? Don't tell me Asr time. Huh? Difference in opinion. Okay, what's the first opinion? Yeah. Okay, you're partially right. So you get one part right. So basically, when the shadow of an object is equal to the length of the object, roughly. Okay, so when that happens, so for example, the sun is like this late Dhuhr time. It casts a shadow. For example, my computer is casting a shadow here, and the height of my laptop, right? When the height of this and the shadow are the same length, that is Asr time, according to Imam Shafi'i. Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and all of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa. Okay? So that's why sometimes you have an earlier Asr time. Have you ever seen those calendars? They have Mithl al-Awwal, Mithl al-Thani, Mithl 1, Mithl 2. They have the earlier time. So that's the opinion of the earlier time. Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion was that you have to wait until the sun is actually much lower, meaning it's a later Asr time, and the shadow is twice the length of the object, roughly speaking. Okay? There is a little bit of an exception where you have to add a minimum, the minimum shadow, but I'm going to speak very generally. So that's why you have a first Asr time and a second Asr time. Okay? So whichever school you follow that Asr time. If you need to, the question often comes up, I have a meeting at work, I have a doctor's appointment, I haven't prayed Asr yet, and I pray on the later time. Can I pray on the earlier time sometimes? I'm about to go to the shopping mall. It's going to be difficult for me. I'm going to break my wudu, and I don't want to make wudu in the mall. Can I pray on the earlier time? Again, my teachers will say yes, because both Asr times are valid differences of opinion. Others who are very strict Hanafis, they may say no. But my teachers generally, Hanafi teachers, said, okay, if there's a circumstance, or you walk into a masjid, and they're praying on the earlier Asr time, do I have to say, no, I can't pray with them? No, I can join them. But you will find scholars who say, no, you can't pray with them. So you have to remember there are differences of opinion, right? But my opinion is, whenever you're with a community or a masjid, follow what that community or masjid does, because differences of opinion are all correct, inshallah, right? Okay, any questions about Asr time? Yeah. This is a very good question. He asks, so what's the right opinion? The reality is we don't know. We don't know. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he saw two Sahaba make two different decisions, and he said that both of them are acceptable. The Prophet ﷺ told a group of companions who were going, he said, when you get to Khaybar, I want you to pray Asr prayer. Okay? So on the way to Khaybar, Asr started to end. And they said, we're not going to make it to Khaybar by Asr prayer. What should we do? Should we miss the prayer? Or should we just stop and pray? One half of the Sahaba said, listen, the Prophet ﷺ didn't want us to miss prayer. Let's just pray now. And we weren't able to make it for Asr. Other group of Sahaba said, no. The Prophet ﷺ said, pray Asr at Khaybar. You do exactly what he said, even if you have to miss the prayer, make it up at Khaybar. So they were divided. One group prayed Asr right there, outside of Khaybar. And the other group missed Asr and made up Asr in Khaybar. They went back to the Prophet ﷺ, and basically he approved both of their ijtihad, both of their decision making. He approved both, that they both exercised their reasoning. So that's why we can't say which opinion is correct, because we don't know. When we go back to Allah, Allah will tell us. Allah will tell us which opinion was correct. But this is why the scholars have differences. And this is actually a very important point. This idea of, many times you'll hear scholars saying, and this is the correct opinion, inshallah. What they should be saying is, or what you have to put is, this is the correct opinion according to me. That's what they're saying. Oftentimes, but Shaykh so-and-so said it's the correct opinion. No. But then the other Shaykh said that's the correct opinion. So everyone thinks their opinion is correct. And the poor common person gets so confused. This is why there were different schools of thought, because different huge imams came to different conclusions. And they had their evidence, right? So it's very important to know that. We're not going to settle the debate. Should you do Rafal Yadain every single time you move in prayer? Do you have to do this? What is the correct opinion? We don't know. There are different evidences on either side. One scholar said this is correct, one scholar said this is correct. As a normal Muslim, all I say is, difference of opinion, I choose to follow this or I choose to follow that, right? We're not here to prove a madhab. The next is, let's see, the beginning of Maghrib time. When is the beginning of Maghrib time? Yes. Sunset. What does that mean? What does sunset mean? Are we talking about when the sun first starts to dip below the horizon, so it starts to disappear below the horizon, or when it's completely below the horizon, or when the redness is all gone from the sky? Which one? Which one is Maghrib? Which one is sunset? Yes. So when the sun starts to set below the horizon, that's the beginning of sunset, but that's not the beginning of Maghrib. Maghrib happens when the entire sun goes beneath the horizon. So for example, the other day I was on Lake Ontario, and now you can't see because there's so many buildings. But if you're on Lake Ontario, you can clearly see, at least, well, not necessarily always clearly because there are still buildings, but you can actually see in a better way how the sun goes below the horizon. When that sun completely disappears, as soon as it completely, that's the beginning of Maghrib time. That's the beginning of Maghrib time. And sometimes you can tell as well, because what ends up happening is one side of the sky looks light still, the other side looks reddish purple. This side looks light with the sun setting, and on the opposite side it's empty. So it starts looking dark. Okay? So that is the beginning of Maghrib time. You can start praying at that time. Okay? Now, what time does Maghrib go until? In other words, when does Isha begin? Yes? Yes. That there are different, so when the sky is dark. But here's the question. When the sky gets dark, and you look at the sky, sometimes there's a redness still in the sky. So like if you go like half an hour after Maghrib, the sky will be dark. But there'll still be like a redness in the sky. Like it's like black mixed with red. Kind of like a purple. But then there's another time after that where there's like a white, almost like a milky sky, and then it becomes pitch black. Okay? There's a difference of opinion. Yes, sister? Asr time? Okay, question for Asr. Yes. When you? Yes. Yeah. Right. It's a hard time, yeah. Use your phone. Yeah. Meaning now, okay. Oh yeah. So guys, in these prayer times, you can pray from the beginning of the time until the end of the time. Allah gave a window. So you don't have to pray right at the beginning of the time. Same with Isha. This is another kind of thing we have to realize. You can pray Isha from the moment it comes in the night until right before Fajr. You don't have to pray Isha in the first half of the night. It's better to pray it before the half of the night, but it's still valid if you have not prayed it. So sometimes what happens, I'm putting my baby to sleep. I have two younger girls, and I'm putting them to sleep at Maghrib time, and I fall asleep myself. It's happened to me before. And I wake up, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, what happened? Where did the time go? Can I pray Isha at that time? Yes, I can. Even though half the night has long gone. If I wake up at that time, I can still do it. Right? Yes. Yes. Generally speaking, for each prayer, you can pray right until the end of the time. The only exception is Asr time. You are not supposed to pray. You're supposed to pray before the light starts getting very yellow, like 20 minutes before Maghrib. It's not a fixed time exactly, but when the sunset process begins is when the light starts turning like yellow in the day. You know, what they call golden hour. Yeah, golden hour. Everybody wants to do the TikTok reels and everything. So that time is a makruh time. But if you didn't pray Asr, you still have to pray Asr at that time. Yeah, you have to because you didn't pray Asr yet. But to delay it until that time for no reason, you shouldn't do it. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay. Now, so Isha, yes, my brother. Aha, that's a good question. And we're going to actually talk about this. Or did we not? Okay, maybe they didn't talk about this here. I will mention it. Okay, so as I said before, right, that there are some people who say that Maghrib ends at the red twilight, earlier time, and some say that Maghrib ends when the white twilight leaves at the later time. Okay, so that's why sometimes you'll also see different timings for Isha. Okay, so the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa was that it's, it is basically as a reliable position in the school, you can take the later time. So you have more time for Maghrib. But some people would say that Maghrib ends within a short time after Maghrib. Okay? So that's just a general thing. I don't want to get into the technicalities. Yeah? After? No, it doesn't end after 12. It goes right up until Fajr. Okay? Now, the question that you asked about why are there some times that are forbidden to pray? We were told not to pray when the sun is rising, when the sun is at its zenith, and when the sun is setting, because as they say, like, shaitan prays at that time. Like that's it. That's a time when people who worship the sun. That's when they used to pray. So then, generally speaking, you wouldn't pray during sunrise. You don't pray right when the sun is right at zenith, and you don't pray right at the moment of sunset. You wait. So that's the reasoning behind it, right? Those are called the makruh times of prayer. So there's a lot of details, but I can't actually go into all of them. Okay. Generally speaking, okay. Any questions so far about prayer times? Yes. No, sometimes in Isha prayer, there's so much light, artificial light, that you can't tell when Isha comes in. Yeah, I just rely on the time. Like, for all intents and purposes, close your eyes and rely on the timetable, it's fine. Yeah. That's a good question. No, I haven't heard. There are some who say it's disliked or preferred. So disliked to delay it, or preferred to pray within 1/3 to 1/2 of the night. But I've never heard that you cannot pray it up until Fajr as a majority opinion. No, and Allah knows best. Maybe. Yeah, it may be. But there are hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he came and he delayed the prayer Isha until very, very late into the night. So it could be because there are many schools. If there's one position of a different school, that's good that we know that. Yeah. But in general, I will give the more expansive opinions. Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. If there's a storm and you can't see the sun, what are you going to do? You're going to use your phone. That's what you're going to do. Back in those days, that's why they would sometimes delay praying certain prayers until they were sure it came in. Right? So maybe Fajr, you couldn't tell if it came in, so you would pray a little bit later, right? In general, for the men, they said it's better to pray a little later into Fajr when the light starts coming up, so people can find their way to the masjid. They didn't want people going to the masjid in the pitch dark, in the beginning of Fajr, so they actually used to, that's why a lot of some masjids, they pray Fajr very late, because they want the light to come out a little bit. Now, for women, they say, generally speaking, one opinion is it's best to pray at the beginning of every prayer. And for men, it's best to pray when the congregation in the masjid is the biggest, right? Yes. That's okay when you're Isha. Yes. Yes. That's a very good question. Isha is very late in the summer months. Okay? Can somebody pray 1 hour after Maghrib? So there are different opinions about, I've heard 75 minutes, but I know I've heard I don't know, I've heard the hour opinion, but I don't know where exactly it's coming from, right? So this is what they do. They try to use different opinions, red twilight, white twilight, to try to make Isha come in as early as possible. Because for many people, it's very difficult to pray, right? So if somebody absolutely could not do it, for example, they could, if they had to. Some people say, if I stay up until Isha time, I will not get my sleep. And then Fajr will be hard. So if there's no other choice, they could even delay Isha, wake up before Fajr, and pray it during like Tahajjud time. And then and then pray Isha, and let sunrise come and pray Fajr. That's in an extreme case. I don't advise that. Yeah, no, if there's an opinion where it's valid to pray Isha and go to sleep, it's always better to do that because you may not wake up in time for Fajr, you may miss your Isha, right? So that's what I would suggest. My kids who are very small, I don't even make them pray Isha because it's too late for them. They won't get up for school. So if you're baligh, that's different. But if he's age, yeah, that's different. Then yeah. Yeah, then no, then take the earliest opinion you can to pray Isha, you can take that. I would recommend that more than delaying the Isha until Fajr. Because then he can sleep more into Fajr too. Yeah, I've heard 75 minutes as an opinion, but the hour, I have to see who says that, to be honest. But once you have an opinion from somewhere, as your responsibility, you're done. So one masjid is following this, close your eyes and you can follow it. One imam said this, one sheikh said this. Your job is just to take the opinion, and you don't have to worry about, generally speaking, if it's coming from a proper scholarly source, it's fine. Like a fatwa, for example. Yes. It's mashallah. His brother's asking, what if you want to sleep before Isha? So normally speaking, it's makruh to sleep before Isha because there's a chance you might keep sleeping and miss it. But if the problem is sometimes it's just too late for you, you're too tired, you won't wake up the next day, you're not going to get the right sleep for your work and school, then there's exceptions when it's extreme, right? May Allah reward you. Okay, we have to move on now because we still have to get into a lot of things. Okay, the conditions for salah. These are called the shurut. A shart is something that has to be there before you do something, right? So like, let's say like one of the conditions, when you have a precondition of doing something, okay? So the preconditions for salah. Number one, you have to be pure from what they call, not hadith, that's a misspelling, hadath. So we talked about last week purification, okay? Purification of the body, purification of the clothes, purification of the place of prayer, and spiritual purification and physical purification. And remember we said that there is a little bit of impurity on your body, najasa, that you're allowed to have, it's forgiven. So for anybody who gets waswasa OCD, they should not obsess over the impurity too much and get worried about it, right? So that's the first condition, tahara. We discussed that last week. The second condition is also purity from filth, spiritual purity and physical purity. So wudu, ghusl, and cleanliness. The third one, you have to cover your nakedness. So before you pray, you cannot pray in a state of undress. You have to cover your nakedness. And for a man and a woman, that differs. For a man, the nakedness is from the navel to the knee. So you have to cover at least that. So if a man jumps out of the shower and there's no time for Fajr, okay? He slept, he's in janaba, he wakes up, he takes the ghusl quickly, and he realizes if he puts on his clothes, he's going to miss prayer. As long as he has a long towel, he can wrap it around and pray like that. It's not good to pray like that, but it's better than nothing. Okay? Now the question is this. Is the navel included in the aura of a man? Does he have to cover his navel, yes or no? Difference of opinion. When they say navel to knees, some scholars said it means under the navel until the knees. And some said no, it means you cover the navel as well. So there's difference of opinion. In the Hanafi school, it's right below the navel, okay, to the knees. The same question comes up. Is the knees included or not included? The Hanafi school said you have to cover the entire knee. The other schools, Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmed, said that you don't have to cover the entire knees, okay? And this will also be reflected sometimes in the way people wear shorts. So sometimes people wear shorts that cover their knees. If they're strict Hanafis, they cover their knees, they wear longer shorts, and others wear shorts that are a bit shorter. But in any case, above the knee, you cannot show. Okay, above the knee you cannot show. Now for women, in their prayer, their nakedness is different. Their nakedness is everything except for the hands and the face. So they have to be covering everything except the hands and the face. What about the feet? Do you have to cover the feet? Difference of opinion. Okay? Difference of opinion. So in the Hanafi school, you can uncover the feet while praying. I think Hafiz ibn Taymiyyah, I think he also said you can uncover the feet. Other schools of thought say no, you have to cover your feet either by having a very long dress or by wearing socks. So in other words, this is nothing to condemn people about. Sometimes I've heard sisters comes in the masjid and someone says, sister, you're not covering your feet. Your salah is wrong. You shouldn't say that. If someone's taking a different opinion, no problem. There's different valid opinions. Okay? Okay, any questions about covering the nakedness? Yes. Which one? I've only heard the Hanafi school allows that. That's not the majority opinion, no. No. It depends also what you mean majority. Because, 3 schools say no. Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's a good question. So the question here was, what about the idea of your aura temporarily being uncovered? So it happens, as he mentioned, every time the men go into ruku and sujood, you get a little bit of a show that you didn't want to see because their shirt slides up, okay? For example, sometimes if you're wearing shorts, when you bend your knees, the knees will show. For sisters, this happens a lot too. Of course, the sleeves go up like this, or the hijab comes back like this, for example. So there's different opinions, again. I'll tell you the Hanafi school, which is quite accommodating. And that is, as long as the quarter of the limb is not revealed. So if it's just a part of the backside, part of the back, then actually the prayer, it's not good to do. It's not permissible, but the prayer is still valid. So a woman's head gets shown a little bit in her prayer, it's still valid. Her sleeve rides up above her wrist, not to a quarter, it's still valid. Same thing with the back. However, that doesn't mean it's permissible. It's still wrong to do that. So you have to cover before you pray the things that you have to cover. Now, what happens if a lot gets uncovered? Like let's say a woman's hijab almost completely comes off, or a man's, if a man's pants fall almost down, like almost all the way down. So what happens? As long as it's not 3 subhanallahs, subhanallah, 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 you have that time to cover up. If that time passes, that 3 subhanallahs, now that 3 subhanallahs is just to show, there's no time exactly by the clock. How long does that take? Somebody could count subhanallah, subhanallah, others subhanallah, subhanallah. So guys, there's some things in Islam, they're not exact. They're just by using your sense. Okay? There's no way you can exactly say, what is the quarter of a limb? Tell me, what is the quarter of someone's backside? How are we supposed to measure that? What is the quarter of your head? How are we supposed to exactly know that? So these things, guys, are general guidelines. Who decides? Not me. You know who decides? Not Imam Abu Hanifa. You know who decides? You decide. And whatever you decide is fine. It's right. So nobody can come and say, disagree. Nobody can come and say, oh no, it wasn't like this. Because it's whatever position Allah puts you in, you have to sometimes make a decision. Now, if you're somebody with waswasa OCD, and you're always worried, oh no, some of my hair is showing, some of my this is showing, some of my this is showing, then actually, if you're not sure, you should do the opposite and always assume your prayer is valid. Guys listening? OCD people? Always assume your prayer is valid. Always assume you're fine. You're pure, you're fine. Okay? And anyone else who has questions can come back. Now, the one who cannot have enough clothes to pray, and they have to pray naked, right? What do? Then you sit down, okay? You can sit, like ideally, if you're naked and you have to pray, that's different, but ideally you sit down and you just make head gestures for ruku and sujood. Now, God forbid this ever happens to any of us, but this is happening to our brothers and sisters. You know where? Those people who are being oppressed in places like Palestine, in places like China, our brothers and sisters who are, they try to humiliate them, but they can never humiliate them. But they make them pray, they take off their clothes, so they think that you won't be able to pray. But no, even in this situation, the Sharia has said how to pray. And you just pray in a way that you're not revealing so much of your nakedness, sitting on the ground completely, and just moving your head, right, back and forth. That's ideal. Okay. But if they prayed standing completely, it's still valid. Okay. Now, number 4, you have to know the intention for your prayer. So you don't just you don't have no idea what you're praying. You say Allahu Akbar. You have no idea. Remember we talked about intention last week. What did we say about intention? What is intention? Is it saying nawaitu usalli arba rakat kada wa kada? Is it like saying something in your mind? Yes, in the back. Knowing what you're doing. In the back over there. Yes. Knowing in your heart. Okay, intention in your heart, yeah. Okay, good. Doing the act shows you have an intention. Sometimes people think an intention has to be like in your mind, you're like seeing words, or you have to say something. And this is actually a confusion. Sometimes in some countries, they had like a maktab system, and they taught you like a certain formula to say before you get into prayer. Has anybody ever experienced that? What was the formula that they taught? Because I didn't grow up in India or Pakistan. Yes. What was the formula they made you guys say? Anybody know it? Yeah, did they teach you that too? Yes, I heard this too. That some in Indo-Pak, some places, that they actually say recite a certain thing. Yeah, niyat. Yeah. 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 So you don't have to say all those things at all. It was just to know what you're doing. But what they did was, because they wanted people not to get confused, they wrote it down, they taught the kids. What ended up happening was there were people who grew up as adults and they forgot, when am I supposed to say niyat? So they would say Allahu Akbar, then say the niyat. For their whole lives they were doing that. And actually technically that invalidates your prayer. So all your prayers, technically. Allah is merciful, so I'm not scared for them. But this is why that niyyah, it's not like, some people you see them going, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, yes, what's wrong? What's wrong? My thoughts are not, I'm not having a clear thought. My intention is not clear. Guys, if you go to the masjid and you start to go like this, there's no way your intention can be confused. Yeah, maybe once in a while, you might forget, was I praying Dhuhr or Asr? Maybe it happens. But this idea that in your mind, you have to have a clear sentence in your mind and you cannot picture anything else, no, it's not like that. In fact, they say that if you make wudu and you walk into the masjid and you just join Allahu Akbar, you have the niyyah because that's what you were coming to do. So if someone stops you right before you go, and somebody, wait, what are you doing? So I'm praying Asr. That's your niyyah. It's already there. Okay? So please don't get confused about intention. And if anybody gets confused about intention because of waswasa OCD, just pray without that. You know why? Because you cannot pray without intention. And nobody stands going like this and doesn't think they're praying. Okay, good. Yes? Can the intention be changed after the salah begins? No. Once you enter into the salah, that's it. That's what you... No. So you cannot say, I'm praying sunnah. Let's make it fard. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. Yeah? There are, I know in the Shafi'i school, I believe, there are ways to downgrade your intention. From fard, turn it into sunnah. Yeah. There are other schools that do that. I'm not familiar with the mechanics of that. Right? So, alhamdulillah. Yeah, so you started your fard. You start. That's the opinion that I'm most familiar with, that you start with your intention, that's your intention. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, just once you know, that's it, you begin. Now, if you want to say it, yeah, I do, for example, I just do summon a thought to my mind, and then you begin. You can do it, and if you really have a hard time, that's why they said people have a hard time controlling their thoughts, they can say it. So, for example, I had a teacher, hadith teacher, before he used to pray, he used to stand up and he used to say, usalli, like I'm praying, and then he would begin the prayer. Maybe because his thoughts were in different places, so he just used to, but is it a requirement? No. Do you have to say it? No. Should you be scared if you can't say it? No. Okay? Yes. No. Once you pray your asr, your fard asr, then you don't pray it again. You don't double it. Yeah, and you don't change it. So, alhamdulillah. It happens. It's okay. If it happens, no problem. If your dad tells you to do something, you're small. If your dad tells you, hey, come, let's go, you just do what he says. Like, when you're older, it's different, right? Alhamdulillah. Okay, next thing is, you have to face the qibla. You have to face the qibla. But what does it mean to face the qibla? Is it that you have to face what does it mean to face the qibla, by the way? Does anybody know? Yes. Yes. Yeah, okay. So basically what it means to face the qibla is that if you could see the Kaaba, your face would be facing the Kaaba. In Mecca, it's extremely easy. Or I should say, in the Haram, it's obviously very easy. Where's the Qibla? There, you just look at the Kaaba. Once you're looking at the Kaaba, any part of it, you're just looking at. You don't have to look at the center of it. Looking here, that's fine. So basically, our facing the Qibla this way, really what it means is we're trying to look at the Kaaba directly. But because we cannot see the Kaaba, so we don't have to face what they call Ayn al-Kaaba. We don't have to face the exact Kaaba. You have to face Jihatul Kaaba, the general direction of the Kaaba. Okay? So, for example, here, they determine how many degrees is the Kaaba. How many degrees? Do anybody know? North, south, east, west? How many degrees? Almost, it's 54 degrees from what I understand. Right? 54 degrees. Now, here's the funny thing. It's northeast. Yeah, the Kaaba, people don't realize, Mecca from here is northeast. Even though on a map it looks like it's southeast because of how the curvature of the earth. There are a group of people who say, no, you look at you draw a straight line and it goes southeast. So they face southeast. You will find some masjids like that. They face 90 degrees the other way. That's their opinion. Yeah. That's a good question. When you become an astronaut, come to ask me that, okay? Inshallah. Inshallah, Allah make you an astronaut. Just so we stay on the topic. But it's a very good question. They have fatwas for that, alhamdulillah. Okay, so now here's what happens with the Kaaba. So is there any permission to go off the direction? Different opinions. Some people say, no, you have to face the exact, and if you face off, it's not allowed. Others say, if you didn't know, like in the Hanafi school, they say you can face 90 degrees. So let's say the Kaaba is straight. Let's say, for example, the Kaaba is exactly straight on. Then they say you can face a 90-degree angle, so 45 degrees on each side. Even if you prayed like this, it would still be valid. Even if you prayed like this, you could be off a little bit. Okay? So there's actually some leeway. Now what happens, you know what happened to me once? I was in Jordan, and I came inside a masjid. It was the university masjid, Masjid al-Jama'. And I walked in, and I could not tell where the front or the back of the masjid was. I couldn't tell which way was Qibla and which way was the opposite. So I started to pray the way that I thought, because it was just two walls. They didn't have a mihrab in the middle of the masjid. And when I came and I started to pray, somebody came and turned my body physically around, complete 180 degrees in the opposite way. Is my prayer valid? Yes, my prayer is valid. What happens if I finish praying and I thought this was the qibla? I looked and I thought I saw some posters and stuff. I thought this was qibla. So in other words, you prayed and you prayed the complete wrong direction, but you tried to make a guess. You tried to make an estimate. Do you have to repeat the prayer or no? Once you made an attempt to try to even guess, or think about, it might be this way, okay. Even if you get it wrong, it's fine, it's excused. Okay? So sometimes you go inside a change room in Walmart and you have to pray. And you're like, oh, look, the prayer direction is saying this way. But there's so much metal around, if you checked it again, it's saying this way. Now it's saying this way. So which one is it? So as long as you followed some type of reasoning, or you think to yourself, wait, we came in through there, maybe it's this way, or I'm seeing this, I think it's whatever. As long as you made even a minimal effort to try to determine the qibla, even if you get it wrong, you're okay. All right? Any questions about qibla? Some people pray in cars while they're moving. You mean the fard prayer? Yes, you cannot pray a fard prayer in a car while moving, sitting down. That's it, finished. Okay? There might be an exception. I know. This happens a lot. Our sisters do this a lot in some cultures because they don't want to get out and stuff like that. It's not valid. There may be some exceptions to this, like a person is already facing the qibla. They are too sick to be able to prostrate anyways, so they cannot make a sujood on the ground. They can't sit on the ground, and so they prayed in a seat facing the qibla, like on a train, for example. Or, for example, you're in a plane. You're not allowed to get up. The light is on. They're not allowing you to get up. Prayed in your seat. That's a different story. But just because it's people are around, they will see, or someone's going to watch you, no. Or like it's inconvenient, no. That's a good question. There are different opinions on whether you can even pray in a moving vehicle inside the town and the city or outside the city. So that's a little bit of a thing. But in other words, when you're here in the city, no, you get out and you pray standing up. That's what the Prophet would do. Alhamdulillah, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you pray? Pray when you're praying in between time zones on a plane. You pray according to the time at that, where you are in the world at that time. So not according to destination, not according to your home, but at that time, is sunrise happening now? Pray now. Look outside the window, like that. You pray Fajr when it comes in on the plane. How do you determine prayer times on the plane? If it's nighttime, how do you determine Fajr? You open the window and you see if it's a little bit red, then you start praying Fajr. You get it? Same thing with Maghrib. If it's daytime and all of a sudden the sky starts getting red and purple, then you say it's Maghrib, I can pray. And when it's completely dark, then you pray Isha. The only one that's hard is to determine Dhuhr. Right? Dhuhr, you don't know when it comes in, because there's no way you can tell, right? Because once Dhuhr comes in, then then Asr, yeah. And then can you combine? That's another question. We'll talk about that later, but there's different opinions. There's different opinions about combining. Yeah, we'll talk. Save that question for me, okay? At the end, because we still have, a lot to do. No. The timetables. Give me an example. Give me an example. How? So if you're from Pakistan, coming from Pakistan to here. That happens when you're going from from west to east. So when you're going to Pakistan, from Toronto, all the prayers come very fast. So you just pray them all very fast. And if you're going from the other side, then actually what happens is sometimes you don't have a prayer time for like 10 hours. So coming from Pakistan to here, pray whatever time comes. Obviously, don't pray double, like you don't pray one prayer twice. But if all the prayers come one after the other, yeah, then you just pray one after the other, all the prayers. Sometimes it happens the entire plane ride, you had no prayer. Because the time just didn't come in. You were outrunning the sun. So you prayed one prayer and you were always ahead of the sun. Yeah. And other times you're going past the sun in that sense. So the prayer times are coming faster. Okay. Yes. We'll talk about that. It's coming up. Yes.
Just because we're on the topic of plane, and I know a lot of people have this concern, so I just want to reiterate: if you're traveling and you know you're going to miss your prayer, you can't wait. And obviously there's no like convenient way to get up and find a space to pray, and then you just in your seat.
Okay. Question: can you pray on the plane? Is basically the question. Here's the question about the plane. There are different opinions. Nobody knows one solid answer. Why? Because there was no planes in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The closest thing we have in our fiqh tradition is somebody answering the hypothetical question, if there was a flying carpet, would you be able to pray on top of a flying carpet? Some people said, I mean, there are people who scholars thought of these things too. There are some scholars who said, praying on a plane is like praying on a boat, right? Because you're on the water, you're not on the land itself. So there's different ways of looking at that question. There's no doubt that praying on a plane, the best thing is to stand up and pray physically, facing the Qibla on the ground. Now, for anyone who thinks that's impossible, I think for like maybe 15 years, I took many, many flights, and almost all the time I was able to pray standing up facing the Qibla. What happens is we get shy, because we don't want to be the ones asking. We don't want to be the ones being seen. And you don't have to be shy like that. You can do it. I found Western non-Muslim airlines are actually very accommodating. Can I pray in the back? Just ask them. Do you mind is there a time when I can pray? Yeah, come back after half an hour, I'll let you pray, no problem. They actually accommodate. I found the Muslim airlines are very difficult. The Muslim airlines, no praying, no. You know why? Because the plane would stand up. Right? On Air Canada, 1 or 2 people want to pray on the entire flight. Right? PIA, half the plane might stand up and then jam the thing, so they say no. That's why Saudi Airlines made its own prayer room. I think, who else did it? Malaysia, I think one of them, they made their own prayer room. So what happens if it's not practical? So I'm on a plane from in one small US town to like Missouri, okay? And literally the plane is just one aisle of seats, walking, and then one aisle of seats. And I'm the only guy who's brown looking like this on the entire plane. I know if I stand up, it will be like very, very strange. It might not be even like secure for me. What's that?
That plane's gonna come down very fast.
Yeah, like I don't want. I'm like, I don't want to. And there's no space. Or like, I'm gonna be very honest. There's space to pray. The air hostess is saying she's sitting there in a skirt and she's saying, yeah, pray right here, right in front of me. I'm not gonna do that, right? So these are the odd situations I've found myself in, right? So in that case, yeah, I would pray sitting down. But what they say is, if you ask, hey, is there a place to pray? And they say, no, you can't pray standing up. Or the light comes on, and it says you cannot pray standing up. Or there's not enough room, then you can pray sitting in your seat. And there are other scholars who just said you can't pray on the plane, pray after when you get home. Make it up after. Whichever position you take, there's different opinions. All right? Because for some people, like if you're very young and you're very fit, and you can make a wudu inside the airplane bathroom. But for some people, putting your foot in the sink of an airplane bathroom is very difficult. Actually, for a lot of people, it's not easy. So what are you going to do? So that's why there's always opinions that help you, and Allah knows what you're trying to do, right? Okay, yes, question.
In the haram, you said that we are actually supposed to face or look at the.
Yes.
Look at the Kaaba.
Yeah, look at the Kaaba. That meaning like you're facing the Kaaba. Yeah. You cannot in the haram. If the Kaaba is here, but your compass is showing the degrees like somewhere, you can't. Okay, you have to look right at the Kaaba. No, I'm not. When I mean look at, what I mean is you're facing it. When I mean your eyes, but you can, I mean, there are opinions that you can pray looking at the Kaaba, right? Because there are opinions that you don't have to look at the place of sajda, that you look straight ahead. Yeah, Imam Malik, they look straight ahead, right? Or the others, they look down. So there's different opinions where your eyes should go. We'll talk about that. Yes. Just try your best. That's all. Yeah. All right, guys, we do have to move. Okay, is it related to prayer timings or conditions? My friend in the back, the black. Tafadhal, huh? It's easier. Yeah, like wearing socks that you can wipe over, having wudu from before. As believers, guys, if you're gonna go to the mall and you know the prayer time is gonna come, leave your house with wudu. Like as believers, we should always be thinking when you're going to someone's house, before you go, anytime as a believer, we should always be equipped, right? I now, all the time I wear socks that I can wipe over. I went to Walmart and I bought them for myself and my entire family. I must have bought like 10 packs of socks that I can wipe over. Because I want all my kids to be always ready. Anytime you are, that's it, right? Much easier. Much easier. And also, by taking the ruling of wiping over socks, I spare the bathroom of the office that I'm going to from having all this water around. Because what happens is Muslims, when they, especially in like schools, offices, airports, you know, we make wudu. Oh, look, free water. But the janitor hates us. The one who has to wipe the mess, they're not happy. I remember once I was making wudu in an airport bathroom, and the cleaner was like cleaning and looking at me kind of like, you know, and he turned around the corner, and when I finished, I took the paper towels to dry, and then I started drying around. And I saw him come back, look at me like this, and when he saw me drying the thing, he went like that, and he went, right? So make it easier on other people. Okay, let's keep going. So facing the Qibla, we talked about that, okay? And you have to know that the time has entered. So you don't like guess, oh, I think it might be the whole time. Just check the time, or once you know reasonably that it's entered, you can pray. Yes, my friend. When you become a pilot, then I'll then ask that question. Because we can talk about a million theoretical questions, right? How would a pilot pray if he's in this situation? It's a good question. You can ask me after, okay? Now, what I'm going to do, guys, we're going to take a stretching break, okay? We're at the midway point. I want everybody to just don't go anywhere. Just get up and stretch like this. You can move your legs a little bit if you like to. You don't have to stretch if you don't want to, but it's good to. Go on your tippy toes a little bit. Because we're not taking a break. We're going straight to the end of the hour. Okay, Bismillah. Everybody stretch? No, don't need to stretch. And we can sit back down. Good. Next section. Now, finally, we'll ask the question after. Okay, what are the essentials of prayer? The fard acts of the prayer. You'll be surprised. Look, how many fard acts of the prayer? There's only 6 fard things in the prayer. Okay? Number 1, to do what they call it the forbidding takbir, the takbiratul ihram. Takbiratul ihram, why do they call it ihram? It means that once you say Allahu Akbar, the first takbir is called takbiratul ihram. It means that once you enter into the prayer, everything else is haram for you to do. You don't eat, you don't drink, you don't speak. That's why they call it takbiratul ihram. So, you enter the prayer with Allahu Akbar. That is a fard. But here's the question, okay? Do you have to say exactly Allahu Akbar, or can you say any other word? Actually, there's different opinions. Some people say, no, you have to say Allahu Akbar, exactly. And other opinions in the Hanafi school was that even if you said like Allahu Jalla, like Allahu Ajal or Allahu A'zam or something like that. They said any dhikr, you could start the prayer with it. So it's not fard to say Allahu Akbar, but you have to do the takbir and praise Allah in some way. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to stand. It's very obvious. You say Allahu Akbar and you have to stand. Next thing, recitation. Now, what I'm going to tell you about the fard aspects of prayer, you will find this very, very confusing. You know why? Because nobody prays the actual bare minimum. And there's differences of opinion. So what is the minimum amount of Quran you have to recite in prayer? What's the minimum amount of Quran? Fatiha? What else? Any other opinion? 3 what? 3 ayat, that's it? No Fatiha? So Fatiha and 3 ayat? That's second opinion? Okay. So one says Fatiha. One says Fatiha and 3 ayahs, meaning like a second surah. Any other opinions? Yeah? Fatiha and surah, yeah. Actually, there's a third opinion. And there's differences of opinion. In the Hanafi school, the minimal amount you have to recite of Quran is any little bit that you can call Quran. So if you got up and you said, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and you went into ruku', you would cover the fard, even if you didn't do Fatiha. So Fatiha is not fard in the Hanafi school. In all the other schools, they say, no, you have to do the entire Fatiha. Is that understood? However, before you start wondering, how could the Hanafi say, because the Prophet ﷺ said, La salata illa bi Fatihatul Kitab. So where is this? What they say is that this is wajib. And they do a difference between fard and wajib. They say fard is those things from the Quran, the highest level of proof. And they say wajib is that which is, you have to do it, but it's not on the same level of Quran. So the proof is not as strong, but it's very strong. So this is why they say, the Hanafis say, you have to recite Fatiha, it's wajib to recite Fatiha, but if you didn't recite Fatiha, but you recite just a little bit of Quran, the fard would still be complete, okay? So that's the recitation. At least just a little bit of one verse of Quran or some short verses of Quran, 3 short verses. Then ruku'. What is the minimal ruku'? Yeah, brother. Good question. When you are praying in Jama'ah, do you have to recite Fatiha as the ma'moom, as the follower to yourself? What do you think? What are the opinions? What's that? Difference of opinion. D-O, what is it? Difference of, yeah, D-O, do. That's one thing I'm going to tell you, difference of opinion. Some scholars said, some imams said, so yes, you always have to recite Fatiha behind the imam. When the imam is finished, he says, Ameen. Sometimes the imam stays quiet in the Shafi'i countries, and you're supposed to say, you say silently on your own. Another imam said, you only have to do that for the quiet prayers, Dhuhr and Asr. But during the loud prayers, Fajr, Maghrib and Isha, no, because the imam, you heard it from the imam. And Imam Abu Hanifa said, you don't have to recite behind the imam ever, whether in Asr or Dhuhr, or whether in Maghrib and Isha. You just stay quiet. So once you say Allahu Akbar, you just stay quiet. Imam is reciting, and you don't have to recite anything. Is that understood? So different opinions. There's no majority in this case. That you don't recite anything behind the imam. No Quran. Even in the silent prayer. Because the imam's recitation is enough for you. That's what it means. Right? Okay? Alright, so ruku', the minimal ruku', the fard ruku' is just the bending of the back. So just bending of the back. Once you bend the back, that's a ruku'. So basically, if you could just reach your knees, that's considered bending your back. Okay? Just even if you didn't reach, even if you touch your knees, just went like this. That's a minimum ruku'. Of course, we know, is that how you should make ruku'? Ideally? No. How should you make ruku' ideally? Show us a ruku', ideal ruku'. Yeah, just make ruku'. Because kids can do it actually. Yeah, all the way down. Yeah, you have to straighten. Good. See, so you want to be straight. That's the ideal ruku', but minimal is just you went like this. Just bend over a little bit, right? So people who are elderly, sick, or they're injured, if they have to do it, that's okay. Yeah, the sunnah of ruku' is completely straight back. In fact, in India, they in the madrasa they actually put like a glass of water on the kid's back. And if it stays, then it means that your ruku' is fine, right? You see some people, they go overboard and they hyperextend, and they even go even lower than straight. That's not more pious. You're not trying to touch your nose to your knees or something like that, right? Okay, yes. You don't have to recite anything, according to the Hanafi opinion, no. Okay, other questions? Anything ruku'? Sujood. We all know what the sujood looks like, okay? And there is an opinion that if he restricted himself to one of those, nose and forehead. So for example, how should you make a proper sujood on how many limbs? 7. The toes, the knees, the palms, and both nose and head, right? There are some opinions where sujood is just actually your forehead and your nose. That's the middle. So if you didn't put a hand there, or let's say like one of your feet was injured and you were like this on the side, and you just went like this and you didn't do that, it would still cover the fard. Okay, I'm only teaching you the minimum. Why? Why do we learn the minimal? Because if you're ever sick, in a hurry, you're stuck, you made a mistake, you know that actually the minimal prayer is very forgiving. It's very forgiving. Okay? So now then the question comes, can you do it just on your nose or just on the forehead? Those are differences of opinion. We won't get into all of that. What happens if you make a sajda let's say a lady's hijab is very long and her hijab comes in the place of her prostration and she prostrates on it. Or a man is wearing a turban and his turban, the tail comes like this. Can you do that? Or your sleeve, you prostrate on your own sleeve rather than directly on the ground. If you do that, it's still valid. And you know when this might come in handy? When the floor is very dirty and you have no prayer mat. Or once this had to happen as well for me, I was going to miss my prayer time, and I was in the road, and I had to go pray outside on the cold pavement. And it was just icy with road salt. So in that case, that's why if you have a winter hat, you went like this, or a woman had to pray, she's wearing niqab, she didn't lift up her niqab, she just prayed. It's not the ideal way, but it's still valid. Yeah.
I know this is a point of concern for a lot of some cultural backgrounds, but this idea of if you didn't pray on a prayer mat, people get really worried. Why are you not praying on a prayer mat?
Yeah. Do you have to pray on a janamaz or a musalla or a prayer mat or sajada? Do you have to pray on one? Nope. As he said, no, you don't have to. Do you have to pray on the earth? Because in the Shia belief, Shia fiqh, they say you have to prostrate on the natural ground. And that's why you see our Shia brothers and sisters, they actually use what they call a turba. They take mud and they pack it and they pray on a little like circle. Because they believe you have to pray on a piece of earth. Sometimes in university they pray on a piece of paper. Okay? Do you have to do that? No. You can pray on any ground you want. Artificial, fake, real. Can you pray on grass? Yes, you can pray on grass. Can you pray on ice? Yes, you can pray on ice. Alhamdulillah, we can pray wherever we want. Okay, yes, question. Hmm? It has to be in Arabic. Yeah. If it's out loud, Arabic. In your sujood, can you make dua in any language you want? The majority opinion that I've seen is that you make your duas in your sujood in Arabic, but in your mind, you can make dua in every language you want. So if you want to make dua in different languages, you can just wait after the salams and then lift up your hands and make dua as much as you want, right? Okay, let's move on now. And the last fard aspect of prayer is that you have to just sit in the prayer, in the tashahhud position, the final sitting, for the amount of time it takes to do tashahhud. So what happens, do you know, there's a lot of born Muslims, and sometimes they don't pray, and you know why they don't pray? You know why? They say nobody taught me how to pray. Have you ever met? I've met born Muslims like, why don't you pray? I don't know how to pray. So this is where the minimal prayer becomes very, very useful. So even if they sit down at the end and they don't know the tashahhud, at-tahiyyatu lillahi wa even if you don't know that, you just sit there for 15 seconds, 20 seconds, silently. For the amount of time it takes, you sit there. Assalamu alaikum, assalamu alaikum. You've just done the bare minimum, it's valid. Okay, fard means it's valid. And what this means is, as long as you've done these things, your prayer is valid. So if somebody asks about the wajibat, now, what is wajib in prayer? Meaning you still have to do it, but if you don't do it, your prayer is not invalid, but it's just deficient. Number one, you should recite Fatiha. In every rak'ah, okay, except what? Except? Is there any prayer? In your fard prayer, if it's a 4 rak'ah, in the Hanafi school, the last 2, you don't actually have to recite Fatiha. Yeah, you can just stand silent for a little while or say subhanallah 3 times and that's it. All the other schools of thought, you have to recite Fatiha in every single rak'ah. In the first 2 of the fard, it's wajib to recite Fatiha. In the second 2, it's like sunnah to recite Fatiha of a fard prayer. In a sunnah prayer, you have to recite Fatiha and a second surah in every single rak'ah. It's going to be confusing. It'll take time to settle in, right? Oh, we'll talk about that. Very good question. Next thing is this. So, it's also wajib, after you do Fatiha, in the first 2 rak'ahs of the fard, and in every single rak'ah of sunnah, nafil, and witr, you have to do after Fatiha, you have to do a portion of Quran, at least 3 short verses or 1 longer verse. So if I said Fatiha, and then I said, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, ruku', that's sufficient. I can do that. Or if I said 1 longer ayah, that's sufficient as your recitation after Fatiha. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Next thing, when you go into ruku', and it's wajib to stand up after ruku'. So you're not supposed to go from ruku' straight into sajda. Like, oh, I'm down here, might as well go down. No. After you ruku', you say, Sami Allahu liman hamida, right? You get up and you go down. Next thing is, you put your nose on the ground as well as the forehead. Sometimes you see people putting only their forehead. It's wajib to put your nose on the ground as well. And you are supposed to have tranquility in each posture. Have you ever, once I got a ticket from the police officer because I at a stop sign, I stopped, but he said, you didn't come to a complete stop. You came to a rolling stop. Have you heard this before? I got a ticket for that. I said, I stopped. He said, no, you came to a rolling stop. Like you stop and then you keep going, right? So no, you have to come to a complete stop. Same with the prayer. Even if I just did it very quickly. So in other words, you don't go like this. Right? Like this, right? And you're just going like this. So even though I spent 1 second in ruku' like this, it doesn't mean you have to have at least 1 second where you pause. Even if it's a millisecond, right? Like so you said, Allahu Akbar. Even that is at least a pause, right? So you have to have tranquility in each position. Next thing, the middle sitting. So after every 2 rak'ahs, you have to sit down and do a tashahhud. Even if it's not your final tashahhud, that's wajib. Okay? And then the recitation of the tashahhud itself is wajib. So you should learn it. At-tahiyyatu lillahi was-salawatu wat-tayyibat. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Okay? Sorry, I'm going to say. And that's where they say pointing. Now pointing, is this fard, wajib, sunnah? What is it? It's sunnah. So if you didn't point your finger, you forgot to do it, your prayer is not affected by that. And there's different opinions how to point the finger. Okay? Hanafis say, you're supposed to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. The Shafis say, you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, so you put it up at the illallah. So there's a difference of opinion. Whichever one you choose or you do, others say you're moving it through the entire thing. Others say, so whichever one you do and you follow, it's all fine. Okay? And if you forgot to do it, That's okay too. It doesn't mean that your prayer is invalid or anything like that. Next thing is you're supposed to stand up for the third rak'ah without delay after tashahhud. So that's another thing. And it's wajib to say the words of salam. Okay, so say salams. The sunnah, however, say assalamu alaikum, right? Wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So, any questions? I know I'm going through this very fast, but it is an intensive workshop. And at least you've heard this once. It may not all click in at one point. Any questions about what we've talked about so far? Yes? That's a good question. When you're following the imam, do you have to wait for them to finish their position, then you do it? So, like for example, do you wait for them to go all the way into sujood before you go into sujood? Different opinions. Okay, difference of opinion. In the Hanafi school, you follow the imam almost right with the imam, but just a little bit behind. And in other schools, the imam goes into the position first, then you go. This is why you'll notice in some places, the imam goes Allahu Akbar, and then everybody else goes behind him. Allahu Akbar. Then they join the prayer. The Hanafis know. When the imam says Allahu Akbar, they've already started saying Allahu Akbar, and they're basically with him. Same with the salams. When the imam says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then the followers do it. With the Hanafi, no. He says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you do it. Then you do the second one, you do that. So it's just a difference of opinion. How closely should you follow the imam? Whichever one you do is fine. Yes, question. Can you close your eyes during the prayer? Yes, you can. It is the best thing is to keep your eyes open during prayer, right? But and it's disliked to close your eyes for no reason. But if there are reasons why you have to close your eyes, that's okay. That's fine. Even if you, for example, for concentration, if you need to close your eyes to focus, you can do that. Okay? And this is very useful sometimes. Like here in the masjid, you can keep your eyes open. But if you're praying out in like the subway station, people walking all over the place and stuff like that, maybe it's distracting. Or you're praying and there's like, there's something there that's going to disturb you. Then you can close your eyes and pray. Or if but it's not the best thing to do that. Yes. I'm sorry? You can. That's one opinion. But it's better not to. You should follow their salam as closely as possible. Once you've done at-tahiyatu lillahi wa salawat and you finish your tahiyat, even if you're in the salawat on the Prophet, the durood sharif, as they call it, then you don't have to do that durood sharif and complete it. You just go with the imam. Because the durood or the salawat al-ibrahimiyya is a sunnah, it's not wajib, as you're going to see. A dua, you mean the dua? But that's a sunnah to do, that's not wajib. So if the imam finishes and you've done tahiyya ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, right, you just do it. Yeah, we'll talk about that. That's another question. In the Hanafi school, you cannot recite from the mushaf. In other schools, you can hold the mushaf and recite from it. That's it's a separate question. The other question is, what's wajib? That it's wajib for the imam. This is going to be a little confusing because it's very literally translated. Basically, for the imam, it is wajib to recite out loud if there's a congregation for Fajr, Maghrib, and Isha. And it is wajib to recite softly for Dhuhr and Asr. That's wajib. You have to. If you're praying on your own, okay, you can pray quietly for all of them if you want to. But for Fajr, Maghrib, and Isha, men can raise their voices slightly. Women, generally speaking, you do not project your voice or lift your voice, generally speaking. However, if you're just praying so that you can hear yourself, or like there's a little kid over there, you can raise your voice slightly, they say, right? But the point is you're not projecting because you're not an imam, okay? Okay, next question. Qunut of witr. That's a separate question, but it is wajib in your witr, in the Hanafi school, to do dua of qunut. Okay, we'll talk about that. And then the takbir, the Eid Salah is also wajib. Now, it is wajib to follow the order of the prayer. So if you can't do like, I did a sujood, and then I do a ruku', and then I recite Quran, is that okay? Can I do the backwards? Can you believe if you did it backwards, it would still be technically valid, but it would be grossly deficient. And then what would happen if you did not follow this? We'll talk about this. So anything outside of these things that we mentioned, any action of prayer, outside of the fard and the wajib, everything else is sunnah. So where you put your hands, here, 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 that's sunnah. Should you keep raising your hands, doing rafa al-yadayn every single time you move? That's a sunnah question. Does that make sense? Yes.
You might go over this later, but can you tell us from the farther and wajib covered, if you miss them, what happens?
Yes, we're going to get to that. Yeah, we're going to get to that. So everything else is sunnah, yes. Anything about fard and wajib, yeah. Right. That's a very good question. So there is a difference of opinion. Do women have a different prayer than men? So this stems from some of the Darda, who was the wife of a Sahabi. There is a report from her that women of the early Muslims would pray slightly differently than the men. And this is why you'll notice that those followers of the Hanafi school, Indo-Pak mostly, and some Turkish and stuff, the women pray a little differently than the men. Okay? However, it is not wajib to pray differently. So if a woman prayed just like a man, all the other schools say she prays the same. Meaning she makes the same ruku', she makes the same sajda. But according in the Hanafi school, they said it is liked for a woman to pray in a slightly different fashion. So when men pray like this, they said that women should pray like this. Why? Because it covers this area. And that when men make an entire full ruku' all the way, 90 degrees, that women just do it minimally. So they're not bending over. So they made the prayer based on what is more concealing for women. So even the sujood, the men, they have their, like they stick their backsides up in the air like this. But women would be compact. That's how they would do it. But if you didn't do that, it doesn't mean the prayer is anything wrong. Yeah, that's it. A dog. Yes. That's okay to do on that opinion because they say that that applies to the men. Yeah. Okay. About praying like a dog. So the Prophet ﷺ said, do not pray like a dog and put your forearms on the ground like this. You know how a dog when they sit like this? So don't do that. You should put your elbows up in the air or at least off the ground. They could be close, but off the ground. But for women, they make that one exception to be like, to compact, right? Now, I can't exactly imitate how that is, but you understand it. That's the Hanafi school. That's ideal. If you didn't do it, it's still okay, right? Okay. Now, let's read some of the actions before we get to the what's makruh in salah. I'm going to read a list of what is sunnah. It's a long list. So they say things that are sunnah. Like, in other words, when I say sunnah, it means it's not going to make a difference in the validity or the soundness of your prayer if you don't do it this way. In the Hanafi school, when you make takbir, you raise it up so that your thumbs are parallel to your earlobes, like this. But in the Shafi school, they do it like this. So it's up to the like this. Hanafi school is like this. Whichever one you do, it's all valid. They say, do you have to keep your hands like this for takbir or like this? The Hanafis, they do slightly spread apart. Where do you put your hands? The Hanafis say, sunnah is to put your hands, clasp your wrist, and you see your navel, you put it underneath your navel. The Shafi'is say it has to go above. Others say you put it on the chest. Maliki say you put it on the side of your body. In other words, don't worry about it that much. It's whichever one you do. And then Hanafis also say for women, they cover their chest like this. Hanafis, in the Hanafi school and other schools, it is a sunnah to do the opening supplication, the thana, before you begin. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik wa tabarak rasmuk ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk, right? And it is sunnah to say A'udhu billahi shaitanir rajim and sunnah to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So if you missed all of those things, the dua in the beginning, the opening supplication, A'udhu billah, the ta'awudh, the basmalah, and you just said Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, it would still be valid. Okay? The only difference of opinion is that the Shafi'i school, they said that the basmalah is part of the Fatiha, so you have to do it. Okay? Next thing, What else is sunnah? It's sunnah to say Ameen after Waladdaleen, Ameen. That's a sunnah. If you didn't say it, it doesn't ruin anything. Yes, question. So Hanafi school, you say it softly. So the men and women both say it softly. In the Shafi school, you say it out loud, but the women would not say it loud like how the men say it. They say it to themselves. Right? Okay? So that's why sometimes you go to masjids and the imam says, Wala Daleen, and you hear nothing. Crickets. Right? And in other places you go, Wala Daleen, you hear Ameen. And you always hear that lone voice going, Ameen. You know? So whichever one you do, it's fine. Right? Alhamdulillah. What else? Even saying Allahu Akbar between, after the Takbir al-Ihram, saying Allahu Akbar between the positions, that's sunnah. So if you just moved between the position, you didn't say anything, still valid. But it's sunnah to say Allahu Akbar every time. Even saying Sami Allahu liman hamida, coming up after ruku', sunnah. So if you got it wrong and by accident you said Allahu Akbar by accident, no problem. Nothing's going to happen bad. What else? It is sunnah when you're in the sujood and the ruku' that you do the tasbih 3 times. Tasbihat, right? Tasbih. So what is it? Subhana Rabbi al-Azim for ruku' and Subhana Rabbi al-A'la for sujood. Now, if you didn't do that and you just stayed for one moment, it's still you still fulfilled the minimum. It said this is sunnah to do it 3 times, and some people said this is required to say at least 3 times. If you do more, that's fine, but you should try to keep it odd number. 3, 5, 7. If you didn't do it odd number, is something wrong? Nothing wrong. Nothing's going to happen to your prayer. Okay? What else? It is sunnah to do the salawat al-Ibrahimiyya or the durud sharif after you do the tahiyat, to say that. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Some people from some cultures, they add Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. You can do that. You can add Sayyidina if you want to. It's not going to ruin anything. What else? It is sunnah to add a dua after the durud sharif or the salat Ibrahimiyya, such as Rabbana Atina, and different du'as that you can do. Okay? It is sunnah to turn your head left and right. So say full, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. So if you didn't turn your head left and right, if you said the salams, if you just said Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, it's still valid. But it's sunnah to say the whole thing and turn both ways. Okay. Any other? By the way, what's your intention when you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah? What's the intention when you do that? Spiritual question. Yeah, you're giving salams to the entire congregation, to the angels, the imam, everybody. When you do it, you're sending salams to everybody on this side, everybody on that side. And then there's questions of adab. So like a woman, when she's praying, if she has long sleeves, she doesn't have to take her hands out of her sleeves. A man, he should take his hands out of his sleeves. So he shouldn't pray like this. He should take his hands out of his sleeves. That's adab of prayer. Okay? Adab means if you do it, it's nice. If you don't do it, there's nothing wrong, no sin. What else? It's adab to look at the place of sajda. Okay? Now here's the difference of opinion. So let me give this. Okay. So is your prayer invalidated if you're looking around like this? Huh? Is it invalid if you're looking around like this? Sometimes you're walking in the masjid and you're walking and you see your friend looking at you and it's like, wait, he's in prayer. What's he doing looking at me? So if you did that, it doesn't make your prayer invalid. The adab is, some people say to keep looking at your place of sajda. So even if you're in ruku', you're still looking at the place of sajda the entire time. Even when you're in the sitting position, you're still looking. The Hanafis say you're supposed to keep your gaze low. So when you're looking here, it's at sajda. When you're in ruku', you're looking at your feet. Because your eyes are just low. Right? When you're in sujood, your eyes are low. Even your eyes are open at that time. Right? And when you're doing tahiyat, you're not looking at your sajda point, you're looking at basically between your thighs. Okay? And in the Maliki school, they don't look on the ground. They look straight ahead. So sometimes you have this. Somebody goes, Allahu Akbar, and they're just going like this. You're like, have you seen that? I have a friend of mine, he's Maliki, and he was in the U.S. Marines as a soldier, and they were doing some training outside. So during the training exercise, he had to go pray. So he was in a forest. So he went in front of a tree, and he left about this much space, and he went, Allahu Akbar, and he started to pray. And some soldier came and started to cross in front of him, so he went like this. And the man went, shook his hand, and because you couldn't tell if what's he doing. So Abdullah, all of those things are fine. However, it's good not to be, and it is makruh to be putting your head around, turning your neck around. You're not supposed to do that. Turning your neck around to look at different things, that's makruh. Now there might be a time, especially parents, you're praying, and you just want to see, is your child going to crawl off the stairs or something? And you see, sometimes you have to do it. You never want to do it, but sometimes you have to tell them with your eyes. And you keep praying. You don't want to do it, but you have to admit sometimes we've all done it, right? Parents? Yeah. Can you pick up a young crying child? In reality, of course, it's not advisable when you're praying, but if you have to. If there's a minimal movement you can do it, you can carry your child in prayer. The Prophet ﷺ prayed with kids on him. He carried his children. So I've had to do that sometimes. My kid is crying, and I literally pray all throughout the entire prayer. I'm just praying, holding her the entire time. It's not ideal, but if you have to, you have to, right? And then there's differences of opinion. What happens if the diaper is dirty and this and that? So as long as you know the diaper is not dirty, you assume it's clean, you can do that. But if you know the diaper is soiled, then you wouldn't carry that during your prayer. This is different opinions. I won't get into the details. Okay, dislike things in Salah. Number one, it's dislike to fidget with your clothes. So you shouldn't be going in the middle of your prayer. It's dislike to be going this. You see people fiddling around? Even if it's a slight movement, you should not be fiddling around, adjusting your belt, going like this. You see people, adjusting their other body parts. They shouldn't be doing that. That's the first thing. Because if it's excessive, if it's continuous movements, some of the ulama say that breaks your prayer. But not if you just scratch here a little bit, it's okay. Slight movement is no problem. But continuously fidgeting. You shouldn't do it. The next thing is, when you go to make a prostration, you shouldn't be trying to clear away all the pebbles. You can do one. You just clear away once, you make a sujood. But you shouldn't be going trying to neaten the place of prayer while you're in the middle of the prayer. That's also disliked. You shouldn't be cracking your knuckles. Just like this. Shouldn't be, sometimes you see people standing, crack. And then they're going, every single finger, they're crack. And can he do it with the pinky? Crack, he can do it, okay. So you're not supposed to be doing that. Yeah, question. It doesn't break your prayer, it's just makruh. It does not break your prayer, just makruh. Next, you should not put your hands on your hips. So if you're getting tired, you should go, okay, this is makruh to do. It doesn't mean your prayer is broken, yeah. Yes. Yeah, so if you're, that is a reason, for example, you need to fix your hijab like this. You need to, if you need to slightly just pull up your pants so that when you go into sujood, your back doesn't show, or you're going like this, you can make slight movements. It's not a problem. The thing is when you're fidgeting, that's what you're not supposed to do. And let alone going like this. But if you did it, does your prayer break? Not necessarily, only if it's excessive movement. You shouldn't be hanging your garment over yourself, okay? So what they would say, for example, is how I'm wearing my jacket. Some people would just take the jacket without putting their arms inside and wear it over themselves or drape it over themselves. So that's makruh. What you should do is wear your clothing properly, not keep it. That's just a minor point. And you shouldn't be playing with your hair, trying to braid your hair in the middle of your prayers. You shouldn't gather up your clothes. So when you pray, let's say you're wearing a very nice dress for the sisters, and you don't want to get it wrinkled because it's your wedding day or something. You're not supposed to gather it nicely and then like this. You just pray. Why? The point is this: you're supposed to be worried about the prayer and with Allah. You're not supposed to be thinking about is my dress going to get wrinkled or not. But if you did that and you gathered up your dress, it's not invalid, it's just makruh to do it, okay? You shouldn't be glancing around like this, that's also makruh. You shouldn't be sitting like a dog, which means you're basically sitting on your backside up with your feet like this. You know, you're supposed to be sitting in the proper tahiyat position. You shouldn't return the greeting of salam. If you're praying and somebody says Assalamu alaikum, and you say wa alaikum salam, your prayer is broken. You can't talk to anybody outside. And it's makruh to even say with your hand. So somebody says Assalamu alaikum, you go, or you go. That doesn't break your prayer, but it is makruh. But I have seen sometimes where scholars will indicate with the hand to show something to someone else. So I remember once I saw one of my teachers, his son was praying with him and they came late to the prayer. And he stood up and he wanted to tell him how many rakahs they have to make up. So he went like this. He just didn't say anything. So it doesn't break your prayer, but it's invalid for no reason. And you should not sit cross-legged in the prayer unless you have an excuse. Okay? What breaks prayer? Yes. Yes, good question. Yes, how do you sit in prayer? Can you guys, I think you guys can see me if I sit here, right? So you're sitting, there's two positions. There's one called iftirash, which is the normal position that everybody does. It's like this. Like this. So your toes ideally are facing like this. You're sitting like that. There's another opinion called tawarruk, in which your left buttock is on the ground and you're like that. Your foot is sticking out like this. Okay, to show you. That's tawarruk. That's in the Shafi'i school. They sit like this at the end, ideally. But if you can't do it, most people just sit like this. Now, in the Hanafi school, for women, they would actually say you sit completely like this. Bring your both feet out like this, like that. That's ideal. If you didn't do it, that's fine. Okay? So some people, they cannot put their feet like that. In other words, if you can't sit like that, sit however you can close to that. Okay? Your prayer is not going to be invalid. The one thing I want to mention here, never ever question, is my prayer invalid? Always assume your prayer is fine. If you have a question, ask. But people get into a negative mentality and they start getting scared that their prayer is always broken. And that gets them into a negative mentality. Number one, what breaks your prayer? Eating and drinking. So if I'm in the middle of prayer and I start going like this, I've broken my prayer. But what happens if the food is already in my teeth? Can I swallow it? Yes, you can. It's not going to break your prayer. If there's food in between your teeth, it's better to take it out somehow, like take a napkin or go like that, or spit it out. But if it was already between your teeth and like something went down, it's okay. But what you cannot do is bring food or drink from outside inside. So like, your kid comes and puts like a gummy bear in your mouth while you're praying and you just go like this, and no, you can't do that, okay? Next thing, what breaks your prayer? Okay, this is a bit more of a complicated thing, and I'm not going to go over this. Basically, the question is, if the imam is praying and he breaks his wudu, he can actually stop the congregation without talking, go, renew the wudu, come back and continue leading. He can do that. But it's a very rare situation, and most people don't do that because they just restart the prayer, okay? And in fact, even a normal person can do that, but that's a bit more complicated. They do that. Yeah, that's easier to do because then it's not confusing. And even the individual, just restart, make your wudu again and restart, right? Next thing, if he slept and had an erotic dream or became insane, So this is obvious, okay? If you're praying and in the middle of praying you have a wet dream, you fall asleep and you have a wet dream in your prayer. Your prayer is broken, okay? If you lose your sanity in the middle of your prayer, may Allah save us and protect us, or if you lose consciousness, your prayer is broken. If you laugh out loud, meaning you laugh so others and yourself can hear it, right? There's some people who have a waswasa and they think they're laughing out loud. Do not ever get a waswasa of that. It's not like a compulsive thing. It's like something happens funny and you laugh out loud. That's a different story. Then you have to do that. I'm sorry? Yes. If you laugh aloud for others to hear, then in the Hanafi school you have to repeat your wudu and your salah as a kind of like as a kind of like a punishment, like a consequence, right? In the other schools, you don't have to do that. And if your kid does that, just leave them. Next, if you spoke in your salah intentionally or by mistake, your salah is nullified. So if I'm praying and I said, like, I'm praying in my prayer and for some reason I'm like, thanks Allah, prayer broken. Like anything I say outside of the prayer, my mom asked me a question, I said yes, yeah, prayer broken, right? You have to only say what the prayer is supposed to say. Now, if I mispronounce something in my prayer, is my prayer broken? No. Some people get OCD that, oh my gosh, I'm not saying it properly, so they're like, bismillah, and oh gosh, they're like cough, they're cough and saw. They're worried because they're not Arabic speaking, so they're worried their tajweed is 100% correct. So they're repeating over and over and over and over. This is waswasa, and don't worry. If you mispronounce, if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Keep going. Next thing, if your nakedness gets exposed, remember we talked about how much nakedness, right? If it's more than a quarter. Or if you have najasa on you that's more than the excusable amount. So let's say you're praying, and then your child comes and urinates on you while you're praying. Okay? If it's less than this, it's okay, keep praying. If it's more than this, coming from outside on your body, then the prayer is broken, right? Okay. But if that amount comes that's not excusable and you take it off quickly, that's what they're saying. If your nakedness is exposed, or you have more than this much impurity on your body, as long as it's not for 3 tasbihs, if you take it off quickly, that's fine, you can keep going. Okay? So you're praying, and you all of a sudden, something comes and some najasa falls on your shoe, and you took off your shoe quickly. By 3 subhanallahs, you can keep praying. All right? Okay, I think we're almost coming to the end. We have a program now, I think, as well, right? Yeah. Okay. So then there's a whole bunch of other questions, like if you're praying and your socks that you're wiping over, the 24 hours is expired, that breaks your prayer as well. If you were making tayammum and you got water available and you're praying, your prayer breaks as well. So there's a whole bunch of things that are, I don't want to go into things that might be just very, very detailed. At this point, I'm going to stop and allow you guys to ask questions. Questions? Is the qada prayer when you make up your prayers? So when you miss a prayer, you have to make it up. If you have 5 or less prayers owing, then you have to make them up in order before your fard salah comes next. Unless you forgot or there's not enough time, you have to make them up for. If they are more than 5 prayers, let's say you owe 3 years of prayers, then you can pray your current fard prayer, and you should just pray your qada prayers eventually, bit by bit, every day. You owe them back. You don't have to pray them in order. Yeah. No, you can do, if it's more than 5 prayers that you owe, you can make up a fajr at asr time, you can make up anything at any time. You do it in the order that you missed it. In the order that you missed it. So if you missed like fajr, isha, like that, you would pray it like that before your fard prayer. Unless you forgot and you just went and did it. Or if I make up my qadas, there's not going to be enough time for fajr, so I'm praying my fajr first and I'll do my qadas after, right? Okay, a couple other questions here. If the imam does salam, should you do it with him or after? We answered that. You can do it both opinions. Ruling on clothing going over the ankles. Some say it's disliked. It's disliked to do, but the question is how disliked. Some people say it's a sin, and some people say it's slightly disliked. So in the Hanafi school, it is not extremely disliked. It's just slightly disliked to have your pants over your ankles. But so that we talked about this. What is the distance that you are considered as a musafir? There are different opinions. Some say 77 kilometers. 77 kilometers from the edge of your city to the edge of to your destination. Okay? All right, any other questions? I know it's 4 o'clock. People are coming in. Any other questions? Okay, Jazakallah khairan. May Allah bless you all. And may Allah accept our prayers, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
An idea of where they can go for more information if they want to learn more.
If you want more information, you can always contact me on Instagram.